So it's time to write some JavaScript code in this app.js file. And for that, I'll first of all clear the alert code. Now, our goal is to write a very basic calculator here, where we can enter a number here and add this to the last number we entered up there. So basically a calculator where we can always work with two numbers and add a new number to the old result and so on. So that's the goal here, such a basic calculator. Now for that, we'll need a couple of important pieces that will actually be found in most JavaScript programs. For example, variables and constants. That's a core feature, not just of JavaScript, but of most programming languages. Now, what are variables and constants? In JavaScript, you define a variable like this, and I'll dive into the exact meaning here in a second. Now, what a variable is it's a data container, or data storage, you could say. In most programs you're going to write, you're going to work with some data. Be that a username entered by the user, which you then use to log the user in, or as in the example of our calculator, be that our most recent result we have and the number the user just entered, which we want to add. So that would be data that we want to store because our program needs that data to work correctly. For example, in the calculator, we need the old result and the number the user just entered. So we need these two pieces of data to derive the new result. So we need these two variables to get our new third variable, the current result. So a variable is a data container which holds some data. And in JavaScript, we create a variable by using the let keyword, which you see here on the left, then a name of your choice with some naming rules in mind, which I'll dive into later, then an equal sign, and then the value you want to store in the variable. Now, with a variable created, you can also always reassign it and store a new value in there. So here I'm using the existing variable username, and I assign a new value to it. Now, I only need the let keyword, which JavaScript understands, if you introduce a variable for the first time. If you then assign a new value to it, you don't repeat that keyword. So you only need the let keyword to let JavaScript know, hey, here's a brand new variable my program will need. If you then use that variable thereafter, you do that without let. So a variable is a data container where the value can change. Doesn't have to, but often it will. Now you also have a special form of that variable, you could say. You have constants. For example, let's say you have a total amount of users in your application, which is kind of fixed. Now that's still a data container, but instead of with the let keyword, you create it with the const keyword, another keyword which is built into JavaScript, which JavaScript recognizes and understands. Now the special thing about constants created with the const keyword is that there you can't change the value. If you try to do that, you'll get an error. So there, the values must not change. Now you might wonder why you would have some values stored in a variable if that's not really variable, if it can't really change. And the answer is, sometimes in your code, you have values which never change, which you still want to store in such a data container so that you can initialize them in a central place, let's say at the beginning of your file, and then use them throughout your program. Maybe use the same constant multiple times in different places so you will always reference the same single constant. And if you then ever, in code, when writing your code, you change that value, you change it in one place instead of 10 different places. But that will become clearer once we start writing some code, which we'll do in a second. For now, just be aware of these two different ways of creating variables with let and with const, where variables with let can be changed, with const they can't be. The general syntax is keyword, name, and then if you want to store a value right away, equal sign and the value. And also one little hint right away, you typically want to use constants as often as possible, which might sound strange at first because they're restricted in what you can do with them, right? You can't change them, but that's exactly why you want to use them as often as possible. It makes your intention very clear. If you have a value which actually never changes throughout the life cycle of your program or of the part of your code where you use it, well, then you want to make that clear so that if any other developer ever reads your code, quickly understands that this piece of data is never going to change. It simply makes your code easier to understand for others. Now, that was a lot of new and very theoretic knowledge. It will make more sense once we use it, so let's use it.